plants are beautiful. Lots of them, great ones to see here, but look at how nice they show up in containers here. You stage them like this, and all of a sudden they take on a whole different presence here. Marty, you've got one of your favorites over here, right?
I do. It's Mexican marigold. Let's go look at it.
Okay.
It has kind of a strong odor. If you...
Let me check it out here. I got the nose for this, you know.
Yeah.
I like this. This is nice. This is fragrant.
I do too. Some don't, but the good thing about this is it is, of course, very low water use, and even if you don't have a yard, you can have pots, and you can plant low water use plants in pots.
Right, I see that. And also, a lot of the fragrant plants are drought tolerant or less water requiring, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Here, now, this one caught my eye here. This is now this is not to be sat upon, obviously. This is for decor, but look what a nice element this is for the garden. Now these are all succulent plants that are in a...
They're succulents, and succulents actually do awfully well in pots or containers. We wouldn't exactly call this a pot. This is a creation by one of our volunteers.
Oh, well, it's really nice. It's nicely set off in here, and quite a nice little decoration. Oh, look at this one, Marty. This is really creative here. Those aren't your boots, are they?
I think they're one of our volunteers.
One of your volunteers, huh?
You know, even if you have a big yard, you can have a fun little element like this on your patio.
This is fun. But you've got a whole selection of different container plants, even really good sized ones, like this is a Japanese black pine. This is really beautiful. This is very architectural, isn't it? And low requiring of water too, I guess, in this container. Marty, I'm really impressed by the variety of different plants that you can put in containers, and they all seem to grow so well here. This is fantastic.
They do.
Whatever you like in plants, and oh, look, what are you showing me here? What do we have here?
Well, it's a geranium.
Oh, what a beauty.
It's not one of the more common varieties of geraniums, but what a lot of people don't realize is geraniums really don't use that much water, and lots of them do well in pots.
Great drought-tolerant plants here, and very pretty too here, so.
Yeah. And we have a little strange device.
I see the little wire sticking out there. That's a tube, isn't it?
It is, and of course it's pumping water into the plant, going straight to the roots, which is the advantage of drip irrigation.
That gets the water where the plants need it then, here, huh? Down in the root zone.
Yeah, that's the whole concept of drip, is send the water straight to the roots.
One of the most efficient types of irrigation is drip irrigation. That's because you're delivering water directly to the plant. Now, this type of irrigation isn't for every type of landscape, mainly for where you have individual plants that have some distance between each other. Now, you can see on this system here, we have more or less a half-inch supply line. Attached to that is what we call a spaghetti line. This line delivers the water right to the side of this brand new plant.
You've got an incredible array of different alternatives that a person can use to be water conservative in your garden here. And I'm looking over, I don't know how many different types of hardscape you've got here. Obviously, this stuff doesn't need water, does it? But then you've got the ground covers in here too, Marty. How does that fit into the plan?
You know, again, we're looking at alternatives to turf, to grass.
I see.
And while you wouldn't want to walk on those geraniums the way you would walk on grass, perhaps in your yard you might use a combination between perhaps the creeping thyme and some example of hardscape, and the area that you would really heavily impact you would use as hardscape, and the other ground cover, you know, you would put somewhere else. So it's all about choosing, it's all about making choices. This particular area is not an example of what you want in your yard, it's an example of what you might pick. In fact, one of our visitors told me that she wanted this exact thing in her backyard,
just
but
like
that wasn't the plan when it was designed.
Well, having a whole garden dedicated to water conservation is really spectacular in itself, but this is a real important issue, isn't it, Marty?
Well, it's awfully important. You know, it's because in San Diego County, 50 to 70% of the household water budget is spent in the landscape. And we can show you how to cut that in half. Mulch has certainly cut down on weeds. I think a lot of people realize that, but it also really cuts down on the amount of water that you need to put in a garden. And, you know, it prevents quite so much evaporation occurring from the surface.
In many ways, this garden is kind of designed for people who are doing landscapes, but you're inviting children to come into the garden as well, too.
Be careful, those are real worms. We feel like it's really important that kids come here and that families come and bring their kids, because they're the ones that are going to be making all the decisions about water conservation and use of natural resources in 10, 20 years. And they need to get familiar with and enjoy and love nature.
I can remember growing up in Ohio, I had a really large lawn in the front and backyard. We never had sprinklers, but we didn't need them because it rained off and on. In San Diego County, we get less than 9 inches of rain a year, and you have to be much more conscious of getting that proper irrigation on our landscaping. Are we using plants that are California friendly? Or are we using plants that really belong back in a much wetter environment that needs high water use in order to survive? We want our community to start thinking carefully about how do they landscape, how do they water, and how can they use water more efficiently on the outdoor landscaping.
Irrigation is obviously an important part of most people's landscapes here, but properly installed or managed or designed irrigation has a lot to do with water conservation, right, Don?
Yeah, that's right, Julian. Like, for instance, in this lawn area here, when you're designing and installing your sprinkler system, your goal is to have the water be applied as evenly as possible throughout the turf area. If not, you're going to have to apply overall more water to take care of any dry spots that show up.
How do you know how often you're supposed to be watering?
Well, that's like one of the hardest things, Julian, is to try to figure out how much to water. The soil makes a big difference. They're not all the same. Plants have different rooting depths, so sometimes you want to water down maybe a couple inches, or maybe you want to go down even a foot. It's really tricky, but overall you just want to observe it. You know, watch the plant health, know what's going on with your soil, you know, maybe even use a shovel to get in there and see what's happening. But overall, a lawn like this, maybe in the summer we're watering it 3-4 times a week, and down to once a week in the winter. And if it rains, we don't have to water it much at all.
If it rains, don't water, right?
Right,
now,
that's important.
You've got a little croquet mallet over here.
Be my guest.
Really, I can, oh, look at
there
that.
You go, just by magic.
How do
we
you
turned
do that? Okay, I'm gonna, this is a nice, what type of lawn is this here?
Well, this is called Bermuda grass.
Bermuda grass,
and we have it here for our little miniature golf green, but you can try to hit the croquet ball in there if you'd like.
Okay, this little chap will probably do it. Wait a minute.
You gotta hit it harder.
What's
Well, that's one of our little tricks. We try to child-proof this, otherwise we'd be chasing balls all day.
Well, every garden needs an oasis, and especially a desert garden. So I figured a little bit of a waterfall, a little bit of a pond would be a good idea.
Patrick, you need to tell me, how is it that you got into these kinds of plants? Now, I find them particularly attractive, but, I mean, you've gone, look at the diversity you have. You've got so many different things here.
Well, cactus and succulents is something I've been interested in since I was a kid, and I finally, when we bought this property 10 years ago, 20 years ago, was able to actually make use of the interest that I had and actually put the plants in the ground instead of just having a potted collection of cactus and succulents. Look at this agave. There's no way, you can't put that in a pot. No. It really wants to achieve its full size, and it wants to be in the ground. And that's what I love about these plants, is just the sheer drama of them. Right. This is not a garden for wimps. And so it's, you know, you have to really, you know, not mind getting poked every once in a while.
They do have some spines.
They have some spines, and so, you know, gloves are a must, good shoes are a must, but the reward that they give you is just incredible.
I know we're looking at so many different aloes, and we're in so many different cactus and euphorbias.
Right. The nice thing about, you know, doing a desert garden is that there are so many different deserts to choose from, and so I've got, you know, Australia next to South Africa, next to North America versus next to South America. And as long as the plants are drought tolerant and have those same kind of, you know, use requirements, climatic requirements, then they all coexist very well. So it's not a purist's garden by any means.
Well, I think you're pushing the envelope here in a direction that's really important too, because what people think is appropriate for their garden is a matter of style, isn't it? Isn't it a matter of what people have a taste for? But people coming to your garden and seeing this garden would certainly have their taste drawn in the direction of all these wonderful things that we can grow here.
Well, I've had a lot of visitors come through this garden who have said they had absolutely no interest in a cactus garden or in a desert garden per se. But when they see it, they can still appreciate it. They might not want to go home and do it themselves, but that's okay too. I kind of enjoy being unique. But I certainly always encourage people to, you know, to pay attention to the amount of water that they're pouring on their gardens. And, you know, you will notice going through here that there is no lawn anywhere on the property. So that's one thing I've really tried to stay away from. And this garden, about, you know, this third of an acre of the property really is pretty much on its own. There is no irrigation system in this garden. There's no automatic sprinklers of any kind. So 6 months of the year, the plants are completely on their own. And then when the rains come, they're very grateful for it.
As they well should be.
Oh, sure. And I do water occasionally in the summertime, but it's you know, just with a good old hose end sprinkler, and you give them a little drink every month or so when you think about it, and that seems to be all they need.
Well, the effect is incredible. This is, gosh, one of my favorite gardens I've ever been into.
Well, thank you.